Mike sat in his one-bedroom apartment, staring at a pile of unpaid bills. The rent was due in a week, and his checking account barely had enough for groceries. Every morning, he woke up dreading the day ahead. Another shift at a job that drained his energy but barely kept him afloat. He wasn't lazy. He wasn't irresponsible. But no matter how hard he worked, it felt like he was running in place, trapped in a cycle he couldn't break. 38, he never imagined life would look like this. He had done everything by the book. Graduated high school, got a job, stayed out of trouble. Yet, every paycheck disappeared the moment it hit his account. Gas, food, rent, there was never anything left. Some nights, he skipped dinner just to stretch his money a little further. His friends had moved on, started families, bought homes. Mike, he was stuck, constantly doing the math in his head, wondering how long he could keep this up. The worst part? He had no backup plan. No savings, no degree, no connections to pull him into something better. He had tried side gigs, delivering food, selling old stuff online, but nothing ever seemed to be enough. The idea of making real money, of actually building something for himself, felt impossible. People always said, "Work hard, and you'll succeed." But he had worked hard his entire life. Where was his success? One night, as he lay awake, staring at the ceiling, something shifted. He realized that if he didn't change something now, nothing would ever change. He had $500 to his name, the only money he could truly call his own. It wasn't much, but it was all he had. And for the first time, instead of using it to survive another month, he wondered, what if he used it to escape? Mike thought he had another week to figure things out, until he opened his mailbox. A final notice from his landlord. Pay the rent in 48 hours or leave. His stomach dropped. He had never been late before, but this time there was no backup plan, no extra shift to pick up. He stared at the paper, his hands shaking. Homelessness wasn't just something that happened to other people. If he didn't find a solution fast, it was about to happen to him. He rushed to his boss, begging for an advance, just a couple $100s to keep a roof over his head. The answer was cold and final. "Sorry, Mike, I can't do that." He left the office numb, his chest tight, his mind racing. He had worked here for years, given his time, his effort, his health, and none of it mattered. That was the moment it hit him. No one was coming to save him. He was completely on his own. Driving home, his mind went to dark places. Should he sell his car? Sleep in it if he had to? Call an old friend and ask for help? But deep down, he already knew. There was no one to call. His pride wouldn't let him beg, and even if it did, who had money to spare? He had spent his entire life avoiding risks, playing it safe. And where had that gotten him? Trapped, desperate, one bad month away from losing everything. That night, sitting in his silent apartment, he stared at the last $500 in his bank account. He could stretch it out, survive for another few weeks, or take a risk. Something he had never done before. A crazy, terrifying, no-going-back decision. His heart pounded as he opened his laptop. If no one was going to save him, he had to find a way to save himself. Mike ran his fingers over the worn leather of his old wallet, staring at the $500 bills he had tucked away. This wasn't extra money. It wasn't savings. It was all he had left after selling his TV, an old guitar, and even pawning his grandfather's watch. A decision that had nearly broken him. Every dollar represented a sacrifice, a piece of his past traded away for one last shot at changing his future. But what if he wasted it? What if he made the wrong move? His mind raced with doubts. He had never invested in anything before. He barely knew where to start. He could use the money to buy time, pay part of the rent, cover gas and food for a few weeks, but then what? He'd be right back here, staring at an empty wallet, praying for a miracle that would never come. Survival wasn't enough anymore. He needed a way out. His first instinct was to play it safe. Look for another job, cut expenses, stretch every dollar. But deep down, he knew that was just a slower path to the same dead end. Real change required risk. He spent hours researching ways to flip money fast, reselling online businesses, digital products. Some seemed like scams, others too complicated. But one idea kept calling him back. buying and reselling items for profit. Simple, low startup cost, and most importantly, in his control. His hands trembled as he clicked confirm on his first purchase. A small batch of discounted electronics he planned to resell. Half his money, gone in seconds. His heart pounded. Had he just made the dumbest mistake of his life? There was no paycheck coming next week to save him. No safety net. Just this one gamble. He exhaled sharply, staring at the screen. There was no turning back now. The package arrived 3 days later. Mike ripped it open, pulling out the electronics he had bought in bulk. Phone chargers, wireless earbuds, small gadgets people always seem to need. He had seen others flip items like these for profit, but could he actually sell them? He listed them on eBay and Facebook Marketplace, heart pounding. Would anyone even buy from him? Or had he just thrown away half his money on a bad bet? Hours passed. Nothing. Then a notification. Someone bought a charger for $20. Then another. By the end of the day, he had made his first $50 profit. It wasn't life-changing, but for the first time in months, he felt something new, hope. Maybe this could work. Maybe he wasn't completely out of options. He reinvested the money into more inventory, slowly learning what sold fast and what didn't. But the doubts never left. For every good sale, there was a setback. One buyer claimed their item never arrived. Another demanded a refund. Was this even worth it? He was still broke, still behind on rent, still unsure if this could grow into something real. The temptation to quit was strong. The voice in his head told him to stop wasting his time, to just get another job. Most people give up at this stage. Maybe he should, too. But then he thought about the alternative, going back to the same dead-end cycle, working for someone else, struggling every month. That wasn't an option anymore. He had already burned the bridges behind him. So, instead of quitting, he doubled down. He studied his competition, optimized his listings, and pushed harder. If there was even a small chance this could change his life, he had to find out. Things were finally starting to look up. Mike had turned his $500 into nearly $2,000 over the past few weeks, reinvesting every dollar back into inventory. He felt something he hadn't in years, control. But success has a way of testing people, and Mike was about to face his biggest challenge yet. Late one night, he found a supplier offering bulk electronics at a steep discount. It seemed like the perfect way to scale faster. Without hesitation, he wired nearly all his money to secure the deal. Days passed, then a week. The tracking number never updated. The seller stopped responding. Scammed. Mike sat there, staring at his empty inbox, his stomach twisted in knots. How could he have been so stupid? He had ignored the warning signs, desperate to grow quickly. Now, he was back to square one, except this time there was no $500 safety net. Everything he had built was gone in an instant. Maybe this was it. Maybe he wasn't meant to win. For the first time in months, he considered giving up. He had tried, really tried, but life always seemed to push him back down. Maybe it was easier to just go back to a regular job, accept that people like him weren't meant to succeed. He barely slept that night, the weight of failure pressing down on him. The next morning, as he reached for his phone to search for jobs, something stopped him. The thought of going back to his old life felt worse than the pain of losing the money. He couldn't quit now. Instead of wallowing, he studied his mistake. He dug into forums, watched videos, learned how to spot scams and negotiate better deals. He listed the few items he had left, making just enough to start over, this time smarter. The setback had nearly destroyed him, but it also taught him a lesson he'd never forget. Losing money hurts, but staying broke forever is worse. Mike had always believed that hard work was the key to success. Grind long enough and eventually, things would work out. But after losing everything to that scam, he realized something painful. Working hard wasn't enough. He had been playing the game without knowing the rules, making decisions based on desperation instead of strategy. That's when he stumbled upon a video of a successful reseller talking about scaling smart, not just working harder. The words hit him like a punch. He didn't need to hustle more, he needed to hustle smarter. Determined, he changed his entire approach. Instead of buying in bulk from random suppliers, he researched trusted wholesalers and started networking with experienced sellers. He learned about pricing strategies, customer psychology, and how to reinvest without risking everything at once. But the biggest shift wasn't in his business, it was in his mindset. Rich people didn't just work hard. They used leverage. They found ways to make money work for them instead of just chasing it. One night, as he read through business forums, he saw a comment that stuck with him. "We don't get rich by making money. We get rich by keeping it and multiplying it." That's when it clicked. His goal wasn't just to sell products anymore. It was to build a system where money flowed consistently, whether he was working or not. He stopped thinking like an employee and started thinking like an investor. Every dollar had a purpose now, not just to survive, but to grow. This new mindset changed everything. He diversified his income streams, launching an online store instead of relying only on third-party platforms. He reinvested wisely, scaling without overextending. And for the first time, money wasn't just coming in, it was staying. Mike wasn't just flipping items anymore. He was building a business. And that's when things really started to take off. Mike's sales started climbing. What once felt impossible, making even $50 in a day, became his new normal. $500 weeks turned into $1,500 weeks. Every sale reinforced one truth. This was working. But it wasn't easy. His tiny apartment became a storage unit, with boxes stacked against the walls. He spent late nights packing orders, answering customer messages, and searching for the next winning product. His life revolved around the business. The sacrifices were real. No nights out. No weekends off. Friends stopped inviting him because they already knew the answer. "I can't. I have work." He barely slept, running on caffeine and adrenaline, but for the first time in his life, the exhaustion felt worth it. He wasn't working to survive anymore. He was building something of his own. Every late night, every sacrifice, pushed him one step closer to freedom. Then, his first $10,000 month happened. He stared at the numbers on his screen, almost afraid to believe them. Just months ago, he was struggling to pay rent. Now, he was making more than he ever had at his old job. But with success came new challenges. Scaling wasn't just about selling more, it was about managing more. More inventory, more customers, more risks. He realized if he wanted to keep growing, he couldn't do it alone. That's when he made a bold move, hiring help. He brought in a virtual assistant to handle customer service, freeing up his time to focus on strategy. He streamlined his processes, automating tasks and negotiating better deals with suppliers. What started as a side hustle was now a real business. And for the first time, he felt something he had never felt before: control over his future. Mike had spent his whole life chasing money, but now that it was finally flowing in, he faced a new problem: keeping it. Taxes hit harder than he expected. Suddenly, nearly 40% of his earnings weren't even his. He had no clue how to manage cash flow, and with each big payday he spent more than he should. Nice dinners, new gadgets, a better apartment, he felt like he deserved it. But when tax season arrived, reality slapped him hard. He owed thousands and didn't have enough saved. Burnout also crept in. He was always working. Even on good days, he felt exhausted. The business was making money, but at the cost of his time, his energy, and even his health. Was this really the freedom he wanted? He had escaped a dead-end job, only to become a slave to his own business. He had to find balance before the success he worked so hard for started to destroy him. Then came the people. Old friends who never cared before suddenly wanted to catch up. Some asked for loans, others hinted at business deals that felt suspicious. Even family members expected handouts. Where were they when he was struggling? Mike didn't want to be selfish, but he also knew one hard truth. If he wasn't careful, his success could disappear as fast as it came. That's when he realized making money was just step one. True wealth wasn't about how much he earned, but how much he kept and how wisely he used it. He hired an accountant, set up a budget, and started reinvesting instead of spending. He also learned a powerful lesson. Real friends celebrate your success. They don't just show up when they need something. Success had changed his life, but it had also changed the way he saw people. Mike stared at his bank account, barely believing it. 6 figures. A milestone he once thought was impossible was now his reality. He had gone from scraping by with $500 to making over $100,000 in a single year. But as he sat there, he felt something unexpected. Relief? Yes. Pride? Definitely. But pure happiness? Not exactly. The dream had always been to hit this number. But now that he had, a new question lingered. What's next? Financially, everything was different. No more stressing over rent. No more living paycheck to paycheck. He had savings, investments, and a growing business. He even helped his mom with bills, a moment that meant more than any paycheck. But while money gave him security, it didn't erase all his problems. The stress of running a business, the pressure to keep growing, the realization that success isn't just a number. Those things didn't go away. Mentally, he had changed even more than financially. He no longer saw himself as a victim of life's circumstances. He knew now that wealth wasn't about luck. It was about decisions, discipline, and mindset. He had learned to think long-term, to stay calm in setbacks, and to trust himself. The old Mike would have seen obstacles as signs to quit. The new Mike saw them as part of the process. Did money solve all his problems? No. But it gave him something he never had before. Options. The freedom to choose how to spend his time, who to surround himself with, and what future he wanted to build. And that, more than any number in his bank account, was the real breakthrough. If Mike could go back and talk to his past self, the guy staring at his last $500, feeling lost and hopeless, he'd tell him one thing: stop waiting for the perfect moment. Just start. Too many people stay stuck, overthinking, doubting themselves, and waiting for the right opportunity. But the truth is, there is no perfect time. The only difference between where he was then and where he is now. He took action. The biggest shift wasn't in his bank account, it was in his mindset. He stopped seeing money as something that controlled him and started learning how to control it. He realized that working harder wasn't the answer, working smarter was. He let go of the fear of failure because he finally understood. Failure isn't what keeps people broke. Fear is. The moment he stopped being afraid to take risks, everything changed. So if you're watching this and feeling stuck, this is your moment. Mike didn't have special skills, connections, or a lucky break. He was just like you. The only difference? He made a choice. A choice to learn, to try, to fail, and to keep going. If he could do it, so can you. But no one will do it for you. The question is, will you take the first step? Now, let me ask you, what's stopping you from starting? Drop a comment below. I want to hear your story. And if this inspired you, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because we have more stories coming that just might change your life. See you in the next one.